the cup and the league all to be won. Everyone knows there's a job to be done, and with a team so fine, I'm proud they're mine. We'll be singing this song. For we're the boys from Dunfermline Athletic, and now we are on song. For we're the boys from Dunfermline Athletic, and we'll go marching on.
The Dunfermline Athletic Former Players Association podcast is sponsored by Starnut Apparel, affordable and stylish clothing born on the terraces. Visit their website, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook.
Welcome to episode 12 of the Dunfermline Athletic Former Players Association podcast, Walking Down the Holbeath Road, where we will reminisce about yesteryear at East End Park and the players who've been lucky enough to wear the famous black and white stripes. I'm your host, Mikey Mokkiewicz, and on this episode we speak to a player who joined the club in September 1991 and would go on to become the club's record transfer fee received in 1996 when he would join Celtic for a fee of around £650,000, a record that still stands to this day. He would also play 33 times for his country during his career, including 2 appearances at the France 98 World Cup. We hear all about that and a lot more in this podcast, so sit back, grab a bovril and enjoy this one with Jackie McNamara.
Jackie, thanks very much for joining us on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I'm good. Good to be here.
Good man, good man. We'll start right at the beginning. So you were born the 24th of October 1973 in Glasgow. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your early memories of football.
I was born in Glasgow then. My dad was at Celtic at the time. Was there. We lived my early days. I stayed in Cumbernauld until I was 8-year-old, and then my dad had been travelling a few years when he moved to Hibs, so we decided to move to Edinburgh. 1982, I think it was, around about then. You know, I stayed there ever since, even when I was playing my 10 years at Celtic and stuff. So I always stayed in the east after that. Went to school at Portobello and trained with a few clubs, you know, in early teens, and trained with one was Dunfermline, along with quite a few others with Hibs and Dundee United. I went down to Man United a couple of years in a row with a few other boys for Scotland. Had a bad leg break at 15 in March, and then I came back in November, just at the time all my pals were getting signed up full time with clubs. And Dunfermline was the only one that took a chance on me in the January, you know, the following year. Bigley should sign us on a YTS at 16. And yeah, the rest there was working my way up through the YTS scheme.
Brilliant. And what's your early memories when Dunfermline approached you when you were just a youngster to sign for them or train with them?
I really enjoyed it. I used to train just in Edinburgh. It was out near Nidri. We used to train in a gym hall at times if the weather wasn't great. The scout, Sandy Brown, it was the one that kind of picked me up. It was Sandy that convinced Big Jim Leishman to give me a contract and believe me just before he actually passed away, which was difficult. You know, Paddy McGovern used to take the training out there at Edinburgh, and it was brilliant. You know, and his son Justin was a YTS with it at times as well when I first started. So it was a good upbringing. A lot of good senior players, a lot of players at the club, young ones as well. The YTS scheme at the time, but the actual first team coming in, they were in the Premier League. A lot of experienced players, and no, it was a good time to be at the club.
Brilliant. So you mentioned there you signed YTS on the 17th of September 91. You were just 16 years of age. The club then sent you out on loan, am I right in saying, to Geardach?
Yeah, well, we were just playing games, you know, at that point. We were still in everyday training, doing other jobs. But we played the weekend, played for Geardach United, which actually went on to win the Scottish Cup with them. I think there was quite a few of us in the team that played in that team. So it was just to keep us all in a games programme if we weren't playing reserves. So it was actually very good.
Brilliant, mate. And you mentioned him earlier, Jim Leishman. So what's your early memories at Jim? Because obviously you say again, the club were in the Premier League at that time. Everything was going really well at the club. The crowds were big. You know, East Van Cosma, George O'Boyle, really good players at the club. So what was Jim like?
I think Jim was just as he's always been. You know, he was a great character. You know, even my first pre-season, which was in the summer, I came in January. We were running up the hill just down for Dunfermline at Patty's Muir. There was a long. They used to do the hill runs, and Jim had managed to walk up to the top bit and stood at the rock. And he always had his cigar out then, and he was blowing his smoke out his cigar as you were getting to the top of the hill and you're out of breath. But it was, you know, it was a good character, good people there, good coaches as well. With Ian Monroe, we had Jimmy Thompson with the youths helping us, and Joe Nelson would assist Jimmy. So it was again, as I said, it was a really good upbringing for us, you know, at that time.
Mm-hmm. See, obviously, just after you signed, Big Leash was removed as manager, and obviously Ian Monroe then took over. What was that like from a player's point of view? Was that unsettling or
different for myself because I was obviously younger? I wasn't a first team player at that time. You know, Jim done all the media, done all the stuff there. And, I don't know the ins and outs between himself and Ian. Ian obviously was the hands-on with the training. From the outside, it looked like they worked well together. You know, Phil Bonneman was there as well. Was a good coach. But yeah, I mean, I liked them all. I had no issues with any of them. It's disappointing that it didn't work out between them all. You know, it was quite a big fallout at the time with the fans as well.
Yeah, obviously it took a big hit on the attendances. When you were there, you obviously signed as YTS. Who was in your youth team when you first went to the club?
There was a lot of us. So the ones that you know, Mark Bowes, Stuart Gallagher, John Alcote, Jimmy Nairn. I think there was like 20 odd of us in that sort of YTS, or the one who was just finishing it. You know, boys like Pat McAllister and came over from Ireland and stuff like that as well. So it was there was a lot of boys came through that. Again, like any academy or any club, not all of them make it to the first team, unfortunately.
Right. Who were the ones that stood out for you as a youngster? You thought they would go on and have really good careers?
There was a few. Stuart Gallagher was a fantastic wee player, striker. He was Scotland as well, but he was very unfortunate with injuries. He was cruciate. Mark Bowes, who was right back from the 21s as well. You know, I ended up taking Bowes' position, but he was a good player. He didn't, kick on to what I thought he would have. But Jimmy Nairn and guys in the first team, Andy Williamson, Raymond Sharp as well. There was loads of them, but again, it's the ratio for actually making it to the levels is quite slim.
One thing I was wanting to ask you about, and we done a podcast on it recently, was Eagle Glen, the training base the club had. What was your memories of Eagle Glen?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't up there for long. It was 6 months I was there, but yeah, it was. I actually quite liked it, although we didn't use it for training. It was more. I never used the pitches up there at my time there. We would go up there and get changed, so I would have to look after like 4 senior players. With the changing rooms up there, or the kit would be there, we'd get changed, did like a snooker table, and we'd have our lunches and stuff when we came back. Yeah, but we always trained at Petrivi. You know, we get in the vans there and travel down. But yeah, it was a good setup. It was a really good wee setup up there.
Brilliant. And then the following season, 92-93, the Pars finished third in the first division, and you made your debut that season. Do you remember your debut away to Arbroath in the Challenge Cup?
Yeah, I actually got injured in the game. I hurt my knee in the game, medial ligament. A good feeling to get your debut, but it was a bit frustrating because the injury I picked up after it kept us out for a few weeks. I always seen my debut as more when you're in the team, when you're there to stay, which I felt was more under Bert and Dick. That's where I really felt that I got myself in there, because it wasn't just like, right, you're going to play the Challenge Cup in this game. You know you're only in there like maybe making up the numbers or just to give your debut and see how you do. Whereas you're in a league game that means a lot, and they put you in. That's when you know you're in the mix.
Yeah. How did you feel going into that, knowing you were going to make your debut? You're still obviously very young at this point as well.
I think I never phased us. I think that's one thing I had, and I just got on with things. I never really thought about things, even regardless of what game or what level. I was just itching to play and get in that starting team throughout my whole career. So even at that age, I wasn't like scared of making my debut or apprehensive about it. I was just desperate to go and play and perform.
Yeah, in the following season, 93-94, you made 39 appearances for the first team. So I just want to touch on that season, really. Burton Dixon by this point. And you strike up a really good pairing with Ivo Den Beeman. What was your memories of Big Ivo?
Yeah, but we worked well together. Ivo put some great balls in, some great crosses, and I think we complemented each other just with getting up and down that right-hand side. The way that Bert wanted to play really suited me. He transformed us from a midfielder, a centre midfielder, into a fullback. My first start was away at Stirling Albion. I came on for, I think, Bosey in one of the games before it. And the next game he said, I'm going to start you there and see how you do. It was away at Force Bank against Stirling Albion, and kind of never looked back from that. When it's always easier when you're playing with players around you, that can help you, like Sonori, right centre half or whatever. Guys that can talk you through things, and I got a good relationship with Ivo or whoever it was in front of us. Maybe Alan Moore or Kenny Ward or whoever. They're good senior players.
Brilliant. And what senior players were in the team round about that time, and who were you quite close to?
I was close to. I used to travel with Big Westy and Paul Smith from Edinburgh. We used to meet there and travel through in the mornings, and they kind of helped me get in and settle into the team and talk us through things. Big Norrie, likewise, I had a lot of time for the big man, from cleaning his boots and doing all his stuff and his kit. He kind of looked after us quite a bit. And Craig Robertson, guys like that. There was a lot of senior players in the team. No, it was a really good good mix. The good senior pros, and it was really helpful to settle in.
Perfect, mate. And we won't mention your nights out at Nico's and Darcy's just yet with Big Norrie. We mentioned them earlier. Bert and Dick, obviously, with the management team by then. What were they like, and what kind of influence did they have on you early in your career?
I thought they were fantastic. And just good people. Bert was sort of quieter, but his philosophy was attacking football, and being positive in everything you do, which I really liked. And Dick was brilliant with him, and with the team. They're just good at managing people. They're good people, and they've got the best out of you. With a good laugh as well at times. He's full of banter and still is. Dick, when you see him now, his interviews. But again, it creates a good atmosphere in the changing room, and that everybody's relaxed and just wants to go and do their job and win. And, and Bert and Dick, kind of from the previous management team, were totally different. They were more helpful to the players rather than just, be angry at not getting the results or not try and get the best out of them.
Mm-hmm. You spoke about winning. That season was a really bizarre season. If you remember this one, we missed out on promotion by a point to Falkirk. However, we won the more games in Falkirk and scored the most goals in the UK, which was 93 goals. But obviously, the way it worked back then, with the point system, we didn't go up. That must have been a major disappointment.
It was, yeah. It was, again, I think any other season, especially when they changed it, they changed the whole format. We would have been up and champions. We deserved to go up, even, getting to the playoffs and stuff like that. Not to get there was a team. The whole thing, it just seemed a bit unfair. The whole setup at that time.
Yeah, they did change it the next season because we ended up getting to the playoffs, didn't we? We play Aberdeen.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to touch on, I don't know if you remember this one. So the following season, 94-95, you play 30 games and you scored your first goal for the club. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, I think it was Stranraer, wasn't it?
Stranraer, yep. In December 94.
It wasn't a classic, but no, I'd been getting a bit of stick because I'd quite a few assists, and the boys and then that last third, they were saying I was going to get a nosebleed. But it was just good to get that monkey off my back and get the goal. I remember it, and just it was kind of cross crim shot into the back post. I was just so desperate to score and get my first goal, so it was a good feeling.
And then, like I say, that season we finished second again, but we beat the playoffs against Aberdeen. Was there a belief at that time that this was a season we could beat Aberdeen and go up to the Premier Division?
Yeah, I mean, again with a good season, that was the disappointing thing. They had a poor season, and maybe kept their players. We were pushing all the way to the end, and that's the thing. One team pushing to try and get over the line, another team knowing they're going to be in the playoffs, then they can just rest a few up for the last few weeks of the game, then they're all fresh for the playoffs, which really did feel a wee bit like that at the time. It was just I think everybody, after a long season, to go and get another 2 games, and be fresh for it. I think it was too much for us in the end, whereas they were fresh because they probably had rested quite a few leading up to that, knowing they're in the playoffs. So, yeah, I think it was unfairness, to come away that season but not getting promotion.
Yeah, really disappointing. And then the following season, which was a big one for the club and for yourself, 95-96. So you go into that season, obviously gunning for promotion again. Did you know by this point there was clubs watching you? Did you have opportunities to leave the club, or were you looking to leave the club?
There was noises in the summer after the playoffs. There was a lot of talk that I was leaving then, after the Aberdeen game. But I was asked to go and play for Arsenal in a close season tournament, which I declined. I didn't think, I've had a long season. I'm not going down to go and trial in pre-seasons for getting fit, not for going on trial. If they've watched me, they know what I can do. So I didn't go down. I didn't play in it. And there was talk of a few other clubs. I don't know how far away it was from happening, but Blackburn was one at the time when King Kenny was there. But again, this is before Bosman as well. So, we just started the season and the new season again. And then it was a few months before I left.
Yeah, you played your last game on the 30th of September 95, a 2-1 win against St Johnstone. So did you know at that point, I think Kenny Dalglish actually was at that game, watching you for Blackburn. Did you know at that point Celtic had interest in you? No,
I didn't. There was like everything else. I think it's worse. It was worse then than it is now. Now it's social media, but then it was just paper talk, and this team's after me, that team's. It seemed to be quite constant with all different teams that were mentioned that were trying to sign me or whatever, or after me. But I hadn't heard anything concrete. Obviously, the Arsenal was to go down in pre-season, and then Celtic. It came out the day before I left that they turned down. I think it was $500,000 to start with, which I thought was more than enough for me at the time, being in the Championship, my age and everything else. So we'd spoke to them, and I think the club was wanting $1 million at the time, which was crazy. But I got a phone call a few hours later to say that they accepted a bid from Celtic. I think it was $650 plus. 50,000 for Scotland cap, so it's 700,000 all in.
Was there not a player at Raith Rovers? The boy McInnesby maybe went down to Fulham for around £1 million, and Bert was quite keen to emphasise you were the better player. So
I think so. I think there was talk of that. It's hard to. You're on the other side of that, I think even at that. So it was the next morning I had to go through. I got a call that night to say I had to go and speak to Celtic the next day to do medicals and talk to them and see if I want to sign with them. I went into the East End. I walked along to get my stuff, and and Dick were there. I was getting my boots and all my shin pads and everything else, and Bert was upset, giving us a cuddle, and Dick, the two of them were upset at me leaving at that point. They were actually playing that night against Dundee United in the Challenge Cup. But yeah,
that must have been quite a surreal moment for you, knowing that you're leaving.
I loved it. Actually, I loved being there. I loved my time there. But I kind of, you've got your ambitions as well. And to be honest, at that point, it kind of helped save the club a little bit with the money, because I think it was the bank that accepted the bid. The club was in a lot of financial trouble at the time. To get that kind of money for me, it came through in a YTS for nothing, didn't cost me anything. I thought it was a great bit of business, and I was disappointed, obviously, seeing Bert and Dick upset and saying cheerio to them and everything else, but they knew I had to go as well. It was the right time for us.
Yeah, obviously we'll touch on your time at Celtic next, but just to kind of round up your time at Dunfermline, you mentioned him earlier, Norrie McCarthy. What's your memories of big Norrie? Obviously playing along beside him, and you were a young player at that time.
He was a very laid-back character. Not one you would get on the wrong side of. Good. He liked a good time. He liked to laugh. For a young lad coming in, as I said, I used to clean his boots, and he was always brand new with me in the mornings. He was a clatty big bugger as well at times. The way he'd come in as if he'd just rolled out his bed with all his clothes on. And he was Mr. Dunfermline at the time. He's pub in the nightclub with Winker, another great guy. I used to go in there quite a bit with pals and stuff as well and see him. And I think that was the one thing that kind of helped me, that I'd left the club. I know the boys coped well with it. I'd actually been in his place a couple of weeks before he passed away. So, before I went to Celtic. So, in that sense, I'm glad that I didn't have to go in every day and not see him, if you know what I mean. I think the players and the management done unbelievable that season, considering, the loss of Norrie, not just on the park, but off the park. And as a guy, to come, which probably helped him and the fans to try and do it for him, get over the line and get up, which they deserved. But personally, I would have found it really tough going back in.
Yeah. How did you hear the news on the 8th of January, Jackie? Do you still remember that day? It's one of those JFK moments, isn't it?
Yeah, I got a call. It was big Andy Todd. Big Toddy phoned me. Aye. I was still living in Dunfermline. I was still living there. I lived just round next to Toddy. And he came round and I just couldn't believe it. Even, it's just trying to come to terms with it, and the reality of it. It's just such a shock. Somebody like that, so big and strong and powerful, to happen to him. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was really tough to deal with. But to round up your time at Dunfermline, Jackie, you played 96 games all in, so you just about made that 100 mark. Is there any specific memories that stand out for you? Like that one kind of memory that you still remember really fondly?
To be honest, I had a great time there. When I'm ever saying to young players, I look after players now, and like, what's the best way to make it? For me, if you'd said to me I was going to go through, say, Celtic's academy or Hibs academy and go and play the first team and do it that way, but I think to go a team there and go and play the games that I did, and give us a sense of want as well. When I first came to Dunfermline, they used to wrap up the tickets and throw them up when the players came out, down the steps, or the fans when the players went on the field. And I used to, along with the other YTS, have to get the rakes on a Monday morning with the red ash and rake all the tickets up. And thinking, I want to be on that starting 11 as well, so I don't need to be doing this on a Monday. But it did, painting the terracings, washing the cars, doing all the stuff there, sweeping the terracings, getting all the rubbish up. It gives you a sense of a want, rather than just taking things for granted, doing all the players' boots, things they don't do now. And that's when you do make it, you look back in that, and that it gives you a good grounding, along with the players that are there. Good senior players that had decent careers that helped us along the way. And I wouldn't have changed anything. I think it was the best for me the way things worked out. The Dunfermline took a chance on me. I was really proud to be there for the time that I was, and it's a big factor in my success as a player.
Brilliant, mate. And who were you closest to during your time? Who were your mates at the club?
Latterly, I'd say Big Toddy. I used to be inseparable. At that time, we lived next to each other. We travelled, the games, and I got on well with him. Prior to that, in the first few years, it was mostly all the boys in the YTS. We all them. I got on well with them all. They all stayed in the digs. Packy McAllister, boys like that. Gal, Graham Meldrum, Bosey. There was so many good lads have a good careers, and but again, it was good times.
And then in 2011, you were inducted into the club's Hall of Fame. Must have been a proud moment for you.
It was, and wee Joe Nelson, God rest him, lovely wee man. He was, he gave us it, and he was a wee bit emotional on the night as well. It was good to see him. People like that at football clubs, they don't come along very often. Joe, he was such a big part of it. With Jimmy Thompson, it's not here either. It was good. Because as a player, you want to be part of history. You want to look back and say, "Well, I was part of that team, or I did this," and like medals, or winning things, or doing things, or just being part of it. And that spell that I had at Dunfermline was a good time in my career.
So then, obviously, you leave Dunfermline on the 3rd of October '95. You moved to Celtic. It must have been a bit of a dream come true.
It was one of these things that just kind of, you get on with it. I went along that morning after I said to Burton Dick and done a medical, signed the contract, and the manager Tommy Burns said he was playing me that night in my debut, which I was just like coming into Celtic and being there a couple of hours and making your full starting debut. And I don't think, even with the contract they gave me, they didn't think I was going to be a regular. I think they thought it was just going to be us, maybe a few games and then dropping out. But I think they were surprised that I could handle the pressure and the expectations and getting stronger and better each week, which is why a few months later they brought us in and signed a new contract, within 3 or 4 months. So I just now kind of took the position and never looked back. But Dunfermline gave me that grounding, and there was an expectation at Dunfermline as well, which helped me at Celtic, because we were expected to win the games with Dunfermline with good crowds and good atmosphere, and that helped me adjust quite quickly to Celtic.
Brilliant. There was a story when I was doing research on this, Jackie, when the day you joined Celtic, about your boots getting stolen.
Yeah.
What was the story behind that one?
I'd left, my dad had parked the car while we were in signing and doing everything, and then when Tommy, the gaffer, said to us that I'm going to start you tonight against Falkirk at Brockville, he said, you ready? Yes, yes, right, we'll go and get your boots and your shin guards. So I went down to my dad's car, and someone had smashed the back window and stole my boots and my shin guards. I mean, normally you're quite nervous at making your debut, but doing it with somebody else's boots and shin guards away at a place like Falkirk, who had been a bit of a derby for me as a player with Dunfermline. So you're getting that as well as a young kid, wee bits on the side, ex-Dunfermline. So it was, I was quite nervous that one. Quite nervous,
doesn't help.
I had an excuse, so it didn't go well.
And Tommy Burns, you mentioned him earlier, he signed you, such a special man. What's your memories of Tommy Burns? Obviously he's held in such high regard at Celtic.
He was brilliant. He was a brilliant manager, coach, but great person. He was superb for me on and off the park. Being young and worked on a lot of stuff in the afternoons with other players. A lot of personal stuff that he would help you with as well. Time for everybody. He was just that all-round great guy, Tommy.
That first season, you made such an impressive start to your time at Celtic. You won the PFA Young Player of the Year. At that point, did you think, I'm coping with this step up, no problem? Or were you still thinking, I need to improve, I need to get up to speed with the players at this level?
I think you're always looking to improve. You're always striving. I've just always on to the next game. If there's something good there. I don't think I was playing probably any better than I was at Dunfermline. But when you're playing with better players, it becomes easier as well. And the crowd there and everything else. So it's one that you're always striving, and that's as a player I always kind of looked at that. The game is finished. If I did well, great. Or it's the next game, and I kind of did that throughout my whole career. Just move on to the next one and not dwell on the past.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Walking Down the Holbeath Road. We would also like to thank our sponsors at Inverkeithing Hillfield Swifts 2017s. The Swifts are an SFA quality marked community group and have competitive teams for every age group from mini kickers through to amateur level football. So if you're interested in youth football, why not check out their website, www.swiftsfc.com.
So we fast forward a little bit, and then 97-98 when Celtic famously stopped at 10.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from a Dunfermline point of view, there's quite a famous game at the end of that season when a Mr. Falconbridge just about spoiled it for Celtic. What's your memories of that day being back at East End Park?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a good moment personally. The team had started away, and to win my first trophy there. That's what I thought was going to happen. Simon had scored early, and Falconbridge scored with a big loopy header in the last minutes of the game. But it was a disappointing one after the game. But we knew we'd St Johnstone at home the following week to win the league. So fortunately we managed to do that. But I was hoping that, especially being at Dunfermline, I thought it was kind of written in the stars for me that my first medal. Not my first medal, first league medal, first league winners medal was going to be back at the ground where I used to sweep all the tickets up and clean them and do everything and learn my trade. So but wasn't to be.
That season, you also won the PFA Scotland's Player of the Year. So as well as a young player, the previous, you're now the Player of the Year. But I want to touch on that year because you were named in the Scotland squad, which obviously we'll go more in depth about your international career, but you were named in the squad for France 98 that year. What was France 98 like? Obviously, you made two appearances in that.
It was great to be involved in it. Personally, at the time I was deemed as one of the younger ones in the squad, whereas now it's not young. I was 24, coming up for 25, which now that's not deemed that's senior player now, which is crazy. But in terms of that, trying to get a starting berth, had a good season at Celtic. I won Player of the Year. We won the league, but I was playing wing back. Certain games I was playing right midfield. I scored against Liverpool, but Craig had his favourites in the Scotland team, the ones that maybe got him there. So I didn't come on the first game against Brazil when I was dying to come on the first match, which would have been great. I came on the second game against Norway, the 1-1 game, which were getting beat 1-0 at the time, and they moved Craig Burley in one and he scored the goal to make it 1-0. In the last game I started against Morocco, which was a disappointing game. They were actually a very, very good side, but just the experience. It was fantastic to be involved in, World Cup, and secondly, I didn't think it would have been my last. I thought we would have had a Euros or a World Cup in my rest of my time in my career.
Yeah, it must have been that kind of, you take it for granted at the time. Like you say, you'd be thinking, I'll be back at the next World Cup or the next Euros. Yeah,
you do. You do think that when you're younger. I think that I'll get the next one. And unfortunately it became harder and harder, and we've only had one Euros since.
Yeah, mega disappointing. Go back to your time at Celtic. Obviously, there was plenty of star players throughout your 10 years or so at Parkhead.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the ones that stand out for you?
Obviously the main ones would be Larsson, was a fantastic all-rounder. Lubo Moravchik was sensational ability as well, even regardless of his age, both feet. And the last one would be Paul McStay. When I first went to the club, Paul was a fantastic player. Even with really bad ankles, he was still some talent. And helped me sit on the club as well.
And you played under numerous managers, but one I wanted to touch on who seemed to really change it at Celtic was Martin O'Neill. What was it like? What was the turnaround when Martin come in?
I think he brought in like a discipline as well, and he brought in some fantastic players. Chris Sutton being one, brought in real leaders and men, good footballers. John Hartson, Alan Thompson was an unbelievable signing. Brought in Neil Lennon. They're all, but he built a squad of leaders rather than, just good players, good strong mentality. And yeah, it was a good time to be there, and be part of that. For me, I started well under him, and I got injured away with Scotland and lost my place for a little while. And then at the end, I ended up winning him back round and being his captain. So it took a bit of time to get that, but like my whole career starting in Dunfermline, kind of never give up. Just keep working hard and doing well and training and wait for an opportunity. And eventually won him over and became his captain.
Yeah, and being Celtic captain, what was that feeling like?
It was good. It's obviously a very proud thing to do, lead out the team, especially Champions League nights and stuff like that. You're away in Barcelona, you're taking the team out, or Bayern Munich. It gives you that pride and that responsibility as well. Because we did have a lot of captains in the team. As I just mentioned, there are a lot of guys that were good leaders, but for me, it gave us a lot of confidence.
And you mentioned the Champions League there. You must have come up against some world-class players. Who was the toughest opponent you came up against in Europe?
Yeah, it's a different level. For me, it was higher than then. It was anyway higher than international. Ronaldinho in the Barcelona game, I was up against the big guy Ludovic Julie, who gave us a tough time. He was decent. Oliver Mars, there's so many, to be honest. But as a player, that's what you want. You want to play against the best players. You want to be up against them and test yourself. You raise your game and your concentration levels for that, and that's what you look back on the good moments. I
was going to touch on that. Obviously, playing in the Scottish Premier League, there's probably moments you can switch off the concentration because you're playing against a lesser standard. But when you were coming up against a Barcelona, does that require you're having to flip into that? I have to concentrate every second of this match because 1 second could be a mistake. Yeah,
the Barcelona especially, because they've got so much of the ball, and there's the one over there, which we drew 1-1 in Champions League. I nearly scored an OG in the first few minutes. Ronaldinho gets the ball and flicks it over into the channel, and Julie does his wee dart and run, and I sliced the ball, and it just went past our back post. And that was the first minute. I was just like, this is going to be a long night. But, you end up finished to the 89 minutes. I'm 2 or 3 yards behind the centre puckman, and I wouldn't be playing him offside.
So going from fourth bank to the new camp's not too bad, is it?
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah.
No bad. So your time at Celtic, you win everything, Jackie. So 4 Premier Leagues, 3 Scottish Cups, 2 League Cups. And then what I was wanting to touch on was the UEFA Cup final, and obviously the run up to that, which was unbelievable for Celtic. What's your memories of the run-up and obviously the final against Mourinho's Porto?
Yeah, the run-up was unbelievable. The teams we beat, early on, Blackburns, Liverpool, Celta Vigo, Stuttgart were a good side, you know. It was all the way through, and it was just the next game and the next game. In the semi-final against Boavista, we scored late on, and just that feeling that you're in a UEFA Cup final was just brilliant, you know. And the final itself, I thought their goals we lost were poor in the game. But I came on in the 70 odd minutes for Paul Lambert when Martin asked me to try and stop Deco getting on the ball and dictating things, and it was quite difficult getting up to speed because the heat, getting your second win coming on as subs can be difficult sometimes. But you know, I thought settled into it. Then obviously went down to 10 men with Bobo Balde getting sent off. So that was for me the turning point again, and then we lost the late goal. But they were a good side. You know, that same team won the Champions League the following year with Mourinho. So you know, there were no mugs.
Yeah, and am I right in saying in your personal life, your mum was quite sick at that time as well? So it must have been really, really tough.
Yeah, I think that kind of took the significance of it. You know, it's a UEFA Cup final, and after the game, you see our boys walking out. I'm down as well, but I'm more concerned about my mother, who passed away a couple of weeks after that game, 10th of June. So that was, you know, put into perspective. Football's football, but some things are more important.
Definitely. Yeah, we touched on it earlier as well, your international career with Scotland. So I just wanted to obviously speak about that. So you made your debut for the under-21s in December 94 when you were still at Dunfermline. I take it as a youngster, your ambitions was to play for your country.
It was, and you know, I used to go to Scotland games. My dad was in the Tartan Army, and he used to get the bus through from his pub in Musselburgh. I used to go to the games. I was at the Australia game. So to actually be part of the team or be in that setup when they're all coming to watch was unbelievable. You know, the turnaround. Even the 21s game. I was telling somebody the other day that I was playing in Austria and my debut in the 21s, and then my dad and my grandpa and everybody else for the pub. They're all dressed up. They would come to the 21s game before, and I was standing in the national anthem, and I could see them all coming in, and I was standing, and I was there when they're putting the music on, and then they're pushing a shopping trolley into this little stadium in Austria, and my grandpa's in the shopping trolley steaming. he's in the set, and I'm like, oh no. You know, the boys are all looking at it. You know, we're standing there with the national anthem, as I was so embarrassed, trying not to look at them. So my dad had won my grandpa up that night. You know, my grandson's playing for his national team, and you had to push him in a shopping trolley, and he had him crying.
Brilliant.
They were good times.
Superb. And you mentioned him earlier, France '98. Craig Brown. What was Craig like as a gaffer?
Different. It was different. It's different from, you know, anything I'd experienced in club football and club management. You know, you look at all the stuff there, and Craig's motivation was to tell you that the opposition weren't as good as what you thought. You know, and you do it that way. But he was successful. He got us to the last World Cup, and you know, a decent enough relationship with him. You know, I thought I should have had more caps than I had, or the squads I was in. But I'm sure every player can say the same.
Yeah, and the man who replaced him, I want to ask you about as well, Bertie Volz. That whole era. What was that like from a player's point of view?
Different. He had Tommy Burns in beside him, which helped me with different things with coming into it. But I think what he tried to do at the time, his actual record in competition was okay. But he had a lot of friendlies, which he would try out things, try players, which didn't work, you know, and a lot of people kind of turned on him with that. But in actual competition, the results weren't too bad, you know, some of the results we had.
Yeah, he had a tough time, didn't he? Because the national team was in transition. Obviously, Craig Brown had the same squad for about 10 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was, I mean, guys like myself and Simon and, you know, the others, Christian Daly, we were all the same sort of age. So we got to the finals under 21s in '96, and not you know, it was only 3 of us that sort of came through into the national team. It was sort of, but even at 24, 25, you know, that was, I said, that was deemed as young then. So then there seems to be a big gap. You know, if the next one is there, if it would be McFadden's and Fletcher's or guys there, try to bring them on quickly rather than dipping them in. And, you know, you see it now, the youngsters are getting an opportunity now early on to bring them in and seeing it, you know, so they're going to be, which is encouraging for the future.
Yeah. And how do you sum up your time with Scotland? You mentioned you feel you maybe should have had more caps.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's been big-headed. I was playing well at certain times. I wasn't getting a look in. The way that maybe he wanted to play, I think height was a big thing for him, especially Craig. You know, he liked his wing backs to be big or taller than myself. But, you know, I'm very proud to have played for my country in 33 caps. You know, it's fantastic. But, you know, sometimes I do feel I should have had more.
Brilliant, mate. So, going back to your club career, you leave Celtic and you moved down to England to sign for Wolves. Mm-hmm. Did you have aspirations to play in England? Obviously, I've done research and you didn't really want to leave Celtic, did you?
No, I'd planned to finish my career there. I wanted to finish my career, but in football, you don't always get what you want, as I discovered. You know, in 2003-04 season, I was Player of the Year again in Scotland. The sports writers had a good season. I was captain. And I asked for a 3-year deal, and they gave me a 1-year deal, which I was like, okay, right, I'll go and get my head down and work hard again, which I did. I thought I had a good season, my last season there. And Martin was leaving. Martin left to go, and then Gordon Strachan came in. And, you know, as far as I was concerned, he didn't want us. I wasn't difficult to deal with financially, so you know, I just got the feeling that he wanted his own people in, which proved the case. Yeah,
so you moved down to Wales, and Glenn Hoddle's the manager, a legendary player. What was Glenn like to work for?
I really liked him. I did. I thought he was way ahead of his time. You know, and the stuff he would do. You could see obviously the international side. He'd done that as well. But I was really enjoying my football, and then I'd done my ACL, my cruciate ligament after 8 games in training, which put us out up until the end of the season, which was a bit frustrating and a big setback because I was enjoying it. You know, and I get back in the last game of the season away at Norwich, and Glenn left that summer. Pre-season he went away, and then Mick McCarthy came in.
Now, what was the standard like in the Championship compared to what you'd been playing in Scotland? How did you find that?
To be honest, I found it fine. You know, there's probably a few more teams that are kind of Route 1, and being my height, I got a lot of diagonal balls on them, which I didn't mind because I would just use my body and jump into them and made sure I never got a clean header. But as I said, I was enjoying. I think the bit I enjoyed the most was the sort of freshness of it, because you're only playing each other once at home and one away. You know, if you're having to prepare differently when you're, you know, in Scotland, you know, everybody's what they've had for breakfast and their positions they play. So on that side, I quite enjoyed that. You know, you're preparing, you're setting your team up, looking at the opposition, doing it that way. You know, and enjoy the competition.
Brilliant. I take it, did you struggle with like homesickness, or did you quite enjoy staying away from Scotland?
I didn't to start with. Like my wife, as I said, I had my 3 kids. My youngest was just born just as I signed there. My wife came down for the first year, and they moved back to Edinburgh for the start of the second year. In my last year, the last year was a wee bit harder. But the Championship itself, you know, in that league, you're playing 46 games. So it's like Saturday, Monday, or Saturday, Tuesday. So you're away travelling. Although the Midlands, Wolverhampton's quite central, but you're still going away to Norwich, or it's overnight here, or going up to Sunderland. So there was a lot of time you were away, which made it quite similar to Celtic.
Yeah, and then after Wales, you come back up the road and you sign for Aberdeen. And Jimmy Calderwood's the one that takes you there. What was it like working under the two Jimmys?
Different. It was. I came back and obviously, because the family had been there, I had chances to stay down the road, and I'd seen Jimmy when I was out on a stag, out in Spain, and then he kind of talked me into going up there and sign a 2-year, but I lasted, I think, 8 months. It was just, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the travelling. Travelling from the whole point was coming back was to be with the family, and just know what he kind of promised me to start. But I mean, the team itself, we did okay that season. We got to the group stages of Europa League, and my last game was against Queen of the South. We got beaten in the semi-final, which was a major disappointment. And had a wee kind of argument with Jimmy after that, and then so it was best to leave.
Yeah, and then after that, you had a short spell at Falkirk before Partick Thistle, where you would eventually become the manager. Did you have aspirations to be a manager or move into coaching?
I didn't. I think it was just at the time I started my B licence just as I was going up to Aberdeen. I think when I went there, Aberdeen, that's when I first thought I would do it, because we've seen how things were done and how you would treat people, how you would do things. If I was in charge, and then you get to that age, and that, in all honesty, was the first sort of time I actually thought about being a manager and coaching, and I got the opportunity at Partick Thistle, and which was a really tough job, and enjoyed it. Enjoyed the having to do everything. You don't have a lot of resources to do things or buy things or do anything else. It was a chance for me and Simon. We'd done it together, and ended up costing me stuff to do it. But I knew why I was doing it. To get the opportunity. There's not many jobs come up in football and management in Scotland. And sometimes you've got to take a wee punt at it, and we did, and we were doing well. We turned it all around in that year. In the following season, Dundee United came in for us in January, and decided to take that, which was a good opportunity.
Yeah, see, when you started off in management, Jackie, did you take snippets from previous managers you had worked under, like taking good points and bad points, or did you approach it as, I need to be my own man? And
I think you take it as you need to be your own man and make your decisions, but I think you take wee bits from everybody, even without knowing. You know what I mean? You're subconsciously, you'll maybe take wee bits of, what would I do here, or how do you deal with that player? You've seen managers lose a rag. Would you do that? And just try to be myself with it, and try to do it in a good way and help them. And for good spells there, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed especially wee bits at Thistle when we turned it all around. We were playing the football I wanted to play. And at Dundee United, likewise, it took a bit of time because I had to went in the January to get through the end of that season, then start and build like I did at Thistle. And then when you're getting there, the players get sold, and then you're having to do it all again without any help, assistance, which was. But I knew that going into it. I knew how difficult the job and the debt, everything else, but I didn't really get the recognition or support that I needed up there.
Yeah, what was the most challenging aspect of management, did you find?
The most challenging was it's usually the non-football stuff, to be honest. It's the politics there of people wanting your job, or if it's just dealing with the players or dealing with people. The training and doing that, it was fine, but you end up dealing with more things that have nothing to do with the actual game. And that's what it became, especially the last sort of 6 months up at United. It was the players, when the players left in January, Mackay Steven and Armstrong, then they sold Shifty in the summer. So that was my front three, that was all my players, that was all my goals, and trying to replace that with nothing, with no real money, is difficult. But it does take time. You're dealing with the fallout, then my contract get put out and stuff like that, and it just became impossible. Impossible job.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the names there. So the positives at Dundee United, some of the young players you got to work with, Did you know these guys like Ryan Gould and Johnny Russell and Andy Robertson were going to go on and have good careers?
And I actually thought there would have been not so much Andy, because he's obviously flying. Andy's, it was his attitude, and Goldie expected more. He's at that level now, although he's in the MLS with Vancouver. Johnny Russell, yeah, he went out to the States after Derby, but very good player, good attitude. There was Armstrong again playing international. So John Shooter has been very unfortunate with injury. He's a fantastic player. He's still young though. That's the thing. They're still relatively young, so they've still got a good bit, to go. John's at Rangers now. Goldie's at MLS. Andy Robertson's captain of his country. A wee boy that I'd taken from amateur football. So, I do take the bits from that worked with him.
Yeah, and you spent just under 2 years, I think, at Dundee United before moving down south again to York City. So what was that experience like? Obviously, you were manager to begin with, and then you turned chief executive, obviously working behind the scenes in football. So what was that experience like?
Wasn't great, to be honest. I think the whole, even just going down at the start, the best thing about it was the owner. He's my friend, but I hadn't applied for the job. He actually called me out of the blue. I'd been out at work for a month. I'd just been on holiday. It was the first time in October, around my birthday, and then he phoned me to see if I'd be interested in speaking to him about the job. So I went down and I really liked him and wanted to help him to start with, and I took the job. The job was really difficult, with so many things going on. And then when I was decided it was time to call it a day, I said I was going back home. He asked if I would stay and help him, run the club and be his eyes and ears, because his other business was so busy and stuff, and he hadn't trusted anybody to do that stuff for him and be his eyes and ears at the ground. So I said I would do it until they went to a new stadium. So I'd done it for, I think, a year. And it felt a lot longer. But it wasn't enjoyable.
What is the role of a chief exec?
Well, it's obviously overseeing all different parts, whether it be the players, the budget coming in, the players looking at bits for the academy, looking at bits for commercial. Although I would get emails in that complaining about the toilets or something. Totally different from managing. But I was just kind of deal with things the best I could and think what Jason would want, the owner, or speak to him and see what he wants me to do with it and go to the games. But as I said, it was very, very frustrating. It's just as it was as manager there.
I can imagine. Do you have aspirations to get back into football management, Jackie? Or
no,
kind of no.
Nah, it's gone off me. It's the York work experience was. I've never lost my belief in how I've done things and how I do it. In terms of the coaching side or doing that, it's more the actual want to do it. And the frustration that goes with it. It's no, people say pressure. It's not the pressure. It's the frustration and the constant fights. You're just from different angles. It's just at my stage and what happened to us a few years ago. I don't fancy going back into that or doing something that I don't really want to do.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. You mentioned in February 2020 you had a health scare. So tell the listeners what happened.
Yeah, I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage, which is an aneurysm, and I just collapsed. I had no signs or symptoms. I just was in the garden after walking the dogs with my wife and just felt a strange sensation. I had no control and I was passing out and just head first onto the stones and then walk in and out of consciousness at the ambulance. Fortunately, there was an ambulance in the area, otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Got me there, rushed me to the hospital and said that I bleed in the brain. Then they rushed me to the neurosurgery at Hull, where I had an operation to go in and put platinum coils in the artery and tie it up and then divert, which went wrong. And I had a rupture again and then put me in a coma. So I was in a coma for just over a day. At that point, obviously, it's touch and go if you're going to survive or what damage you're going to have mentally. But so I was came out of that, and then it just seemed to be getting somewhere and going back and forth, and it was another operation. I had to get a shunt that drains into my stomach, keeps it all the water in my brain at a certain level, and I've got another operation to get a stent in. So it's been pretty mental, but amazing what they can do. But still here.
Everything good now, yeah.
I hope so. Yeah, I'm just waiting in. So that'll be 3 years coming up in a few weeks. I'm just waiting on another scan a few weeks ago. I'm just waiting on the results for that. So all being well, they'll discharge me back out of the hospital back to my GP if RT looks fine again.
Good stuff. Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed. Something I wanted to ask you about was just before you had the health scare in January 2019, you returned to help Dunfermline out as a consultant when Stevie Crawford was the manager. What did that role involve?
Again, it was trying to help with Stevie and with players coming in and out, try and help them with identifying there, helping with the budget, speaking to Ross. I actually enjoyed it wee bit. So I had no interference with the team or anything or selection or what Stevie was doing, but I would try and obviously speak to Stevie and help him wee bits. And but no, it was good. I thought it was going well, Stevie. We managed to get some good players in, like Nisbet and that. Get some good things done. And during, I think, like everything else, COVID took over. COVID was just when I took ill as well. I would just do at that point, and then obviously the German consortium came in well, and that was it done. But no, I enjoyed it. I liked a lot of time for Ross. I thought he was a really good guy and good for the club. What he'd done, and Stevie. I played 21s with Stevie. I had a good relationship with Stevie as well. I wanted him to do well, but a bit unfortunate in the end.
Yeah, he was. I take it you're not involved now in the club.
No. I finished. It finished that season.
Right.
The new consortium, new owners came in.
Cool. No worries. And what is Jackie McNamara doing now? You kind of touched on it there, a wee bit of what you're doing. So what are you up to now? You've retired? Looking
after players, yeah. I've been doing that for a few years now. After managing players without standing at the sideline, just manage them and help them. Which I enjoy the side of it. It still keeps us involved, and you're kind of going through their careers and try to pass on advice. And there's a lot of pitfalls out there and a lot of different things there, but you're trying to do it in the right way and help them, and hopefully they have the same experiences or better than what I had as a player, and help them get to that point and what they're going to experience, the good and the bad.
And what players do you look after, Jackie?
I look after, I've got male and female players. So senior players, we have Sander Clark at Hearts, John Suter. I used to manage at Dundee United, obviously. Blair Spittle used to manage Dundee United. A young lad, Ben Doak at Liverpool, just probably quite a few young ones that we have, around. So no, I've got quite a few players just now. Got some good female players as well. Sam Kerr for Rangers in Scotland, and it's been good since I've started up.
And the guy Ben Doak at Liverpool seems to be highly rated. He's starting to break into the first team, isn't he?
Yeah, for one so young, it's, but he's exciting. But I think there's a few young players we've got. Like it's just starting out. It's and that's exciting. But you see what they're doing so young.
That must give you a buzz as well, seeing these guys coming through and starting their careers on a high note straight away.
That is, yeah, because I think you can try and sort of tell them or explain what's going to happen it's going to just explode and how this is going to change and what to expect as well. I think it's good for them to have that in their makeup before they even start. That, so it's not a big shock to them or surprise, because it's there's so many things that happen. You don't want them to be spooked by it. They embrace it and they enjoy it, most importantly.
Did you have that early in your career with obviously your dad being a former professional? Were you constantly getting tips on how to deal with certain situations? And
yeah, my dad was like quiet influence. He would just we say wee things here or there. I think that's always difficult as well. See, when it's your own son, when you're just saying that because you're my dad. If you're talking to somebody else's kids, I look after a couple of ex-players' kids, like Gary O'Connor's son, Josh at Hibs, and Robbie Hamilton, who's Jim Hamilton's son. Their dads were both ex-pros, but they think they're just saying that because they're their dad rather than passing on their wisdom. So it's kind of good that I can come in that side of it as well and just basically say similar things to them.
Just to wrap up, we always do a top five. So this applies to your time when you were at Dunfermline, Athletic only. So the most memorable game you played in?
I think it was the Falkirk game at East End. I'm trying to remember, but it was a sellout. It's the only time that the whole stadium, well, in that sense, there. I'm trying to remember there. I was up against Stephen McCall, who I used to clean his boots. And it was a bit of payback for me. He used to give me a lot of stick when I used to come in there. That was probably the most memorable because it was, at that point, coming in and playing such a massive game. And I think it might be a draw. I've got a draw in my mind, that one.
Yeah, I think so.
But that was the year that they were strong as well, It was a fantastic game to play in and to be involved in.
And you kind of covered it earlier, but your best mate at your time with the club?
It would have been Big Toddy, aye. It would have been Big Toddy. Good big lad. Big PC Todd now, isn't it?
And obviously his laddie's coming through at Dunfermline now as well, and there's quite high hopes for him.
Yeah, he's doing well. It's good.
Brilliant. The best player you played against when you were at Dunfermline?
Maybe Neil McCann, who's at Dundee. A good tussles with Neil. As a winger and the right back. Yeah, probably that one.
Your favourite stadium to play in?
East End, no.
You can see East End, aye.
It was. I'm not just saying that. It was a good stadium. Big pitch. I liked because it was a big pitch as well. And down that stand side and getting to the byline. Having all that space to run into.
Superb. And your favourite memory from your time at the club?
I don't have so many good memories there. The season there with Bert and Dick was the best memories. Getting to the playoffs, securing that, although we should have went up. I think the goals that we scored and the way we played, that I'm sure the fans still remember that time, watching it, how exciting it was and how many goals we scored and crosses gone in. So I think that was, for me, that was the best time.
It's not the memories of Magaluf in pre-season, no?
No. I'd only one trip to Magaluf. That was just before I left. It was just before I got married as well. I got married that summer, and Bert, I was talking to Dick about it. Bert and Dick were worried because I was 21 at the time, and they were like, "We need to watch wee Jackie." He says there because Big Norrie used to say you have to be on the beach by 12 o'clock, and then we had to be there, and you just maybe got in at the early hours. And I think it was the third day, and I went up and asked him if I could get one to go to the go-karts. He was laughing a bit. What about me drinking? I'll be go-karting, a wee boy.
Brilliant.
But it was
superb.
I think 3 days was my limit. 3 days of drinking solid. I could never get beyond that. No good experience for that.
Perfect. We'll wrap that up. So Jackie, that's been tremendous. Thanks very much for chatting to us. We really appreciate your time.
No problem.
Thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe to this podcast, which is available on all popular platforms such as Apple iTunes, Spotify and Google Podcasts. Thanks to our guest in this episode of Walking Down the Holbeath Road. This podcast was produced by Jan Motkiewicz and music supplied by Stuart Dusty Miller. We look forward to speaking to another former par in the next episode.